What is the largest crater on the Moon?
The largest crater on the Moon is Bailey. Its diameter is 184 miles, 296 kilometers.
Is it possible to use animal organs as replacements for human organ transplantation?
In 1984, a 12-day-old infant, baby Faye, received a baboon's heart. She lived for 20 days before her body rejected the transplanted heart. Since the supply of human organs is far less than the need for human organs, researchers continue to search for alternative sources of organs. In 1999, the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, prohibited the use of non-human primate organs for human transplantation unless researchers could assess the risk of disease. A major concern had been that viruses and other diseases that were harmful to the animals would be deadly to humans. Researchers continue to search for alternate sources of organs, including pigs.
Where did the term bug originate?
The slang term bug is used to describe problems and errors occurring in computer programs. The term may have originated during the early 1940s at Harvard University, when computer pioneer Grace Murray Hopper discovered that a dead moth had caused the breakdown of a machine on which she was working. When asked what she was doing while removing the corpse with tweezers, she replied, "I'm debugging the machine." The moth's carcass, taped to a page of notes, is preserved with the trouble log notebook at the Virginia Naval Museum.
What are riptides and why are they so dangerous?
At points along a coast where waves are high, a substantial buildup of water is created near the shore. This mass of water moves along the shore until it reaches an area of lower waves. At this point, it may burst through the low waves and move out from shore as a strong surface current moving at an abnormally rapid speed known as a rip current. Swimmers who become exhausted in a rip current may drown unless they swim parallel to the shore.
How did the protest fight of Phytophthora infestans influence Irish history?
Phytophthora infestans, one of the potato's most lethal pathogens, causes the late blight of potato disease. This pathogen was responsible for the Irish potato famine of 1845 to 1849. P. Infestans causes the leaves and stem of the potato plant to decay, eventually causing the tuber to stop growing. In addition, the tubers are attacked by the pathogen and rot. It has been estimated that during the potato famine 1.5 million Irish people emigrated from their country and moved to various parts of the world, but most immigrated to the United States. An estimated 400,000 people perished during the famine due to malnutrition.
What is the average age when puberty begins?
The average age when puberty begins in the United States today is around 12 years in boys and 11 years in girls. The normal range is 10 to 15 years in boys and 9 to 14 years in girls.
What are X-rays?
X-rays are electromagnetic radiation with short wavelengths, 10 to 3 nanometers, and a great amount of energy. They were discovered in 1898 by William Conrad Röntgen, 1845 to 1923. X-rays are frequently used in medicine because they are able to pass through opaque, dense structures such as bone and form an image on a photographic plate. They are especially helpful in assessing damage to bones, identifying certain tumors, and examining the chest, heart and lungs and abdomen. A major disadvantage of X-rays as a diagnostic tool is that they provide little information about the soft tissues. Since they only show a flat, two-dimensional picture, they cannot distinguish between the various layers of an organ, some of which may be healthy while others may be diseased.
How is the light in fireflies produced?
The light produced by fireflies, photinus pyroles, or lightning bugs, is a kind of heatless light called bioluminescence. It is caused by a chemical reaction in which the substance luciferin undergoes oxidation when the enzyme luciferase is present. The flash is a photon of visible light that radiates when the oxidating chemicals produce a high energy state, which then revert back to their normal state. The flashing is controlled by the nervous system and takes place in special cells called photocytes. The nervous system, photocytes, and the tracheal end organs control the flashing rate. The air temperature also seems to be correlated with the flashing rate. The higher the temperature, the shorter the interval between flashes, 8 seconds at 65 degrees Fahrenheit. 18.3 degrees Celsius, and 4 seconds at 82 degrees Fahrenheit, 27.7 degrees Celsius. Scientists are uncertain as to why this flashing occurs. The rhythmic flashes could be a means of attracting prey or enabling mating fireflies to signal in heliographic codes that differ from one species to another, or they could serve as a warning signal.
Why is it more difficult to breathe at high altitudes?
It is difficult to breathe at high altitudes because there is less oxygen available in the atmosphere. If the concentration of oxygen in the alveoli drops, the amount of oxygen in the blood drops. At altitudes of 9,843 feet, 3,000 meters, or more, people often feel lightheaded. Especially if they are exercising and placing extra demands on the cardiovascular and respiratory systems.
What is the longest muscle in the human body?
The longest muscle is the sartorius, which runs from the waist to the knee. Its purpose is to flex the hip and knee.
When was Java developed?
Java was released by Sun Microsystems in 1995. A team of developers headed by James Gosling. 1955, began working on a refinement of C++ that ultimately led to Java. Unlike other computer languages, which are either compiled or interpreted, Java compiles the source code into a format called bytecode. The bytecode is then executed by an interpreter. Java was adapted to the emerging World Wide Web and formed the basis of the Netscape Internet browser.
What are lichens?
Lichens are organisms that grow on rocks, tree branches, and bare ground. They are composed of two different entities living together in a symbiotic relationship. 1. A population of either algal or cyanobacterial cells that are single or filamentous. And 2. Fungi. Lichens do not have roots, stems, flowers, or leaves. The fungal component of the lichen is called the mycobiont, Greek myx, fungus, and bios, life. And the photosynthetic component is called the photobiont, Greek photo, light, and bios, life. The scientific name given to the lichen is the name of the fungus and is most often an ascomycete. As the fungus has no chlorophyll, it cannot manufacture its own food, but can absorb food from algae. Lichens and algae enjoy a symbiotic relationship. Lichens can often be found growing around and on top of algae, providing the algae protection from the sun, thus decreasing the loss of moisture. Fungi and algae were the first organisms recognized as having a symbiotic relationship. A unique feature of this relationship is that it is so perfectly developed and balanced that the two organisms behave as a single organism.
Is coral bleaching related to changes in the environment?
Although corals can capture prey, many tropical species are dependent on photosynthetic algae, zooxanthellae, for nutrition. These algae live within the cells that line the digestive cavity of the coral. The symbiotic relationship between coral and zooxanthellae is mutually beneficial. The algae provide the coral with oxygen and carbon and nitrogen compounds. The coral supplies the algae with ammonia, waste product, from which the algae make nitrogenous compounds for both partners. Coral bleaching is the stress-induced loss of zooxanthellae that live in coral cells. In coral bleaching, the algae lose their pigmentation or are expelled from coral cells. Without the algae, coral become malnourished and die. The causes of coral bleaching are not completely understood, but it is believed that environmental factors are involved. Pollution, invasive bacteria such as Vibrio, salinity changes, temperature changes, and high concentrations of ultraviolet radiation. Associated with the destruction of the ozone layer, all contribute to coral bleaching.
Who invented Teflon?
In 1938, the American engineer Roy J. Plunkett, 1910 to 1994, at DuPont de Nemours discovered the polymer of tetralurethalene, PTFE, by accident. This fluorocarbon is marketed under the name of Fluon in Great Britain and Teflon in the United States. Patented in 1939 and first exploited commercially in 1954. PTFE is resistant to all acids and has exceptional stability and excellent electrical insulating properties. It is used in making piping for corrosive materials, in insulating devices for radio transmitters, in pump gaskets, and in computer microchips. In addition, its non-stick properties make PTFE an ideal material for surface coatings. In 1956, French engineer Marc Gregoire discovered a process whereby he could fix a thin layer of Teflon on an aluminum surface. He then patented the process of applying it to cookware, and the non-stick frying pan was created.
Who invented the telescope?
Hans Lippershey, c. 1570 to 1619, a German-Dutch lens grinder and spectacle maker, is generally credited with inventing the telescope in 1608 because he was the first scientist to apply for a patent. Two other inventors, Zacharias Janssen and Jacob Matthias, also developed telescopes. Modern historians consider Lippershey and Janssen as the two likely candidates for the title of inventor of the telescope, with Lippershey possessing the strongest claim. Lippershey used his telescope for observing grounded objects from a distance. In 1609, Galileo also developed his own refractor telescope for astronomical studies. Although small by today's standards, the telescope enabled Galileo to observe the Milky Way and to identify blemishes on the Moon's surface as craters.
Who invented thermopane glass?
Thermopane insulated window glass was invented by C. D. Haven in the United States in 1930. It is two sheets of glass that are bonded together in such a manner that they enclose a captive air space in between. Often this space is filled with an inert gas that increases the insulating quality of the window. Glass, in general, is also one of the best transparent materials because it allows the short wavelengths of solar radiation to pass through it, but prohibits nearly all of the long waves of reflected radiation from passing back through it.
How much of Earth's surface is permanently frozen?
About 1/5 of Earth's land is permafrost, or ground that is permanently frozen. This classification is based entirely on temperature and disregards the composition of the land. It can include bedrock, sod, ice, sand, gravel, or any other type of material in which the temperature has been below freezing for over 2 years. Nearly all permafrost is thousands of years old. Permafrost is found in Canada, Russia, northern China, most of Greenland and Alaska, and Antarctica.
What products are made from recycled plastic?
A new clothing fiber called Fortril EcoSpun is made from recycled plastic soda bottles. The fiber is knit or woven into garments such as fleece for outerwear or long underwear. The processor estimates that every pound of Fortril EcoSpun fiber results in 10 plastic bottles being kept out of landfills.
What does half-life mean?
Half-life is the time it takes for the number of radioactive nuclei originally present in a sample to decrease to 1/2 of their original number. Thus, if a sample has a half-life of 1 year, its radioactivity will be reduced to half its original amount at the end of a year and to 1/4 at the end of 2 years. The half-life of a particular radionuclide is always the same, independent of temperature, chemical combination, or any other condition. Natural radiation was discovered in 1896 by the French physicist Antoine-Henri Becquerel, 1852 to 1908. His discovery initiated the science of nuclear physics.
What is the biggest known tornado?
The tornado on May 22, 2004 in Hallam, Nebraska holds the record for the peak width of any tornado at nearly 2.5 miles, 4 kilometers, across.
Which protist is an indicator of polluted water?
Euglenoids are unicellular flagellates. Many euglenoids are capable of photosynthesis and are autotrophic. They are commonly found in freshwater ponds and puddles. Others do not carry on photosynthesis and are heterotrophic. Often found in water with large amounts of organic material. Euglenoids frequently serve as bioindicators and are found in large numbers in polluted waters.
What are cyanobacterial blooms?
Cyanobacterial, blue-green algae. Blooms are occurring more frequently in freshwater lakes and along coastlines. They are often due to nutrient enrichment of the lakes, especially nitrates and phosphates, caused by human activities. Cyanobacteria grow faster at warmer temperatures. The thick masses of cyanobacteria absorb so much light that the water temperature increases. The algae at the base of the aquatic food webs prefer cooler temperatures and cannot compete successfully with rapidly growing cyanobacteria in the warmer temperatures. Microcystis, nostoc, and Anabina are examples of cyanobacteria that cause blooms as well as release neurotoxins. This category of blooms is referred to as harmful algal blooms, HABs. They can occur in drinking water and survive typical water purification processes.
What is the largest leech?
Most leeches are between 0.75 inch and 2 inches, 2 and 6 centimeters in length, but some medicinal leeches reach 8 inches, 20 centimeters. The giant of all leeches is the Amazonian Haemanterium gillanii, from the Greek term haemateros, meaning bloody, which reaches 12 inches, 30 centimeters, in length.
What is a perfect number?
A perfect number is a number equal to the sum of all its proper divisors, divisors smaller than the number, including 1. The number 6 is the smallest perfect number. The sum of its divisors 1, 2, and 3 equals 6. The next three perfect numbers are 28, 496, and 8126. No odd perfect numbers are known. The largest known perfect number is 230213766, 230213777, 1. It was discovered in 2001.
What is the dew point?
The dew point is the temperature at which air is full of moisture and cannot store any more. When the relative humidity is 100%. The dew point is either the same as or lower than the air temperature. If a fine film of air contacts a surface and is chilled to below the dew point, then actual dew is formed. This is why dew often forms at night or early morning, as the temperature of the air falls. The amount of water vapor the air can hold also decreases. Excess water vapor then condenses as very small drops on whatever it touches. Fog and clouds develop when sizable volumes of air are cooled to temperatures below the dew point.
Why does hair turn gray as part of the aging process?
The pigment in hair, as well as in the skin, is called melanin. There are two types of melanin, eumelanin, which is dark brown or black, and pheomelanin, which is reddish yellow. Both are made by a type of cell called a melanocyte that resides in the hair bulb and along the bottom of the outer layer of skin, or epidermis. The melanocytes pass this pigment to adjoining epidermal cells called keratinocytes, which produce the protein keratin, hair's chief component. When the keratinocytes undergo their scheduled death, they retain the melanin. Thus, the pigment that is visible in the hair and in the skin lies in these dead keratinocyte bodies. Gray hair is simply hair with less melanin, and white hair has no melanin at all. It remains unclear as to how hair loses its pigment. In the early stages of graying, the melanocytes are still present but inactive. Later they seem to decrease in number. Genes control this lack of deposition of melanin. In some families, many members' hair turns white while they are still in their 20s. Generally speaking, among Caucasians 50% are gray by age 50. There is, however, wide variation.
What are designer drugs, such as China White?
Designer drugs are synthesized chemicals that resemble such available narcotics as fentanyl and meperidine. China White, 3-methylfentanyl, is one of these drugs and is an analog of fentanyl. It is 3,000 times more potent than morphine. Even small amounts can be fatal. And it has been responsible for more than 100 overdose deaths in California.
Why are coal, oil, and natural gas called fossil fuels?
Coal, oil, and natural gas are composed of the remains of organisms that lived as long ago as 500 million years. These microscopic organisms, such as phytoplankton, became incorporated into the bottom sediments and then were converted, with time, to oil and gas. Coal is the remains of plants and trees, changing into peat and then lignite, that were buried and subjected to pressure, temperature, and chemical processes for millions of years. Fossil fuels are non-renewable sources of energy. There is a finite supply of the resources for fossil fuels. Eventually these resources will diminish to the point of being too expensive or too environmentally damaging to retrieve. Fossil fuels provide more than 85% of all the energy consumed in the United States, including 2/3 of the electricity and nearly all of the transportation fuels.
Who proposed the phlogiston theory?
Phlogiston was a name used in the 18th century to identify a supposed substance given off during the process of combustion. The phlogiston theory was developed in the early 1700s by the German chemist and physicist Georg Ernst Stahl, 1660 to 1734. In essence, Stahl held that combustible materials such as coal or wood was rich in a material substance called phlogiston. What remained after combustion was without phlogiston and could no longer burn. The rusting of metals also involved a transfer of phlogiston. This accepted theory explained a great deal previously unknown to chemists. For instance, metal smelting was consistent with the phlogiston theory, as was the fact that charcoal lost weight when burned. Thus the loss of phlogiston either decreased or increased weight. The French chemist Antoine Laurent Lavoisier demonstrated that the gain of weight when a metal turned to a calx was just equal to the loss of weight of the air in the vessel. Lavoisier also showed that part of the air, oxygen, was indispensable to combustion, and that no material would burn in the absence of oxygen. The transition from Stahl's phlogiston theory to Lavoisier's oxygen theory marks the birth of modern chemistry at the end of the 18th century.
Do humans or bloodhounds have a keener sense of smell?
Humans smell the world using about 12 million olfactory receptor cells, whereas bloodhounds have 4 billion such cells and, therefore, a much better sense of smell. For example, the trace of sweat that seeps through shoes and is left in footprints is a million times more powerful than the bloodhound needs to track down someone.
Which place has the maximum amount of sunshine in the United States?
Yuma, Arizona, has an annual average of 90% of sunny days, or over 4,000 sunny hours per year. St. Petersburg, Florida, had 768 consecutive sunny days from February 9, 1967, to March 17, 1969. On the other extreme, the South Pole has no sunshine for 182 days annually, and the North Pole has none for 176 days.
How much methane fuel does a ton of garbage make?
Over a period of 10 to 15 years, a ton of garbage will make 14,126 cubic feet, 400 cubic meters of fuel, although a landfill site will generate smaller amounts for 50 to 100 years. 1 ton of garbage can produce more than 100 times its volume in methane over a decade. Landfill operators tend not to maximize methane production.
In addition to left or right-handedness, what other left-right preferences do people have?
Most people have a preferred eye, ear, and foot. In one study, for example, 46% were strongly right-footed, while 3.9% were strongly left-footed, similar to being right-handed. Furthermore, 72% were strongly right-handed and 5.3% strongly left-handed. Estimates vary about the proportion of left-handers to right-handers, but it may be as high as 1 in 10. Some 90% of healthy adults use the right hand for writing. 2/3 favor the right hand for most activities requiring coordination and skill. There is no male-female difference in these proportions.
What are the major divisions of the brain?
The brain has 4 major divisions: 1. Brainstem, including the medulla oblongata, pons, and midbrain; 2. Cerebellum; 3. Cerebrum; and 4. Diencephalon. The diencephalon is further divided into the thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus, and ventral thalamus or subthalamus.
What are the Platonic solids?
The Platonic solids are the 5 regular polyhedra, the 4-sided tetrahedron, the 6-sided cube or hexahedron, the 8-sided octahedron, the 12-sided dodecahedron, and the 20-sided icosahedron. Although they had been studied as long ago as the time of Pythagoras, around 500 BCE, they are called the Platonic solids because they were first described in detail by Plato, 427 to 347 BCE. Around 400 BCE, the ancient Greeks gave mystical significance to the Platonic solids. The tetrahedron represented fire, the icosahedron represented water, the stable cube represented the earth, the octahedron represented the air. The 12 faces of the dodecahedron corresponded to the 12 signs of the zodiac, and this figure represented the entire universe.
What are the 2 subsystems of the nervous system?
The nervous system is divided into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system consists of the brain and spinal cord, while the peripheral nervous system consists of all the nerve tissue in the body, excluding the brain and spinal cord. Communication. between the central nervous system and the rest of the body is via the peripheral nervous system. Specialized cells of the peripheral nervous system allow communication between the two systems.
What are carnivorous plants?
Carnivorous plants are plants that attract, catch, and digest animal prey, absorbing the bodily juices of prey for the nutrient content. There are more than 400 species of carnivorous plants. The species are classified according to the nature of their trapping mechanism. All carnivorous plants have traps made of modified leaves with various incentives or attract ants, such as nectar or an enticing color, that can lure prey. Active traps display rapid motion in their capture of prey. The Venus flytrap, Dionaea muscipula, and the bladderwort, Utricularia vulgaris, have active traps that imprison victims. Each leaf is a two-sided trap with trigger hairs on each side. When the trigger hairs are touched, the trap shuts tightly around the prey. Semi-active traps employ a two-stage trap in which the prey is caught in the trap's adhesive fluid. As prey struggles in the fluid, the plant is triggered to slowly tighten its grip. The sundew, Drosera capensis, and butterwort, Pinguicula vulgaris, have semi-active traps. Passive traps entice insects using nectar. The passive trap leaf has evolved into a shape resembling a vase or pitcher. Once lured to the leaf, the prey falls into a reservoir of accumulated rainwater and drowns. An example of the passive trap is the pitcher plant, Sarracenia purpurea. The Green Swamp Nature Preserve in southeastern North Carolina has the most numerous types of carnivorous plants.
What is the largest invertebrate?
The largest invertebrate is the giant squid, Archaeoteuthis dux, which averages 30 to 53 feet, 9 to 16 meters, in length including its tentacles. It may reach a length of 69 feet, 21 meters. These animals have the largest eyes, up to 10 inches, 25 centimeters, in diameter, in the animal kingdom. It is believed that they generally live on or near the ocean bottom at a depth of 3,281 feet. 1,000 meters, or slightly more than a half-mile below the surface of the sea. Standard reference work throughout Europe in the 16th and 17th centuries.
When did the concept of square root originate?
A square root of a number is a number that, when multiplied by itself, equals the given number. For instance, the square root of 25 is 5, 5x 5 equals 25. The concept of the square root has been in existence for many thousands of years. Exactly how it was discovered is not known. but several different methods of exacting square roots were used by early mathematicians. Babylonian clay tablets from 1900 to 1600 BCE contain the squares and cubes of integers 1 through 30. The early Egyptians used square roots around 1700 BCE, and during the Greek classical period. 600 to 300 BCE, better arithmetic methods improved square root operations. In the 16th century, French mathematician René Descartes 1596 to 1650, was the first to use the square root symbol, called the radical sign, \\\.
Who established the first botanical garden in the United States?
John Bartram, 1699 to 1777, planned and laid out a botanical garden of 5 to 6 acres. 2 to 2.5 hectare, in 1728. It is located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
What are the differences between reflecting and refracting telescopes?
Reflecting telescopes capture light using a mirror, while refracting telescopes capture light with a lens. The advantages of reflecting telescopes are, 1. They collect light with a mirror so there is no color fringing. And 2. Since a mirror can be supported at the back, there is no size limit. In an effort to alleviate the problem of color fringing always associated with lenses, Isaac Newton built a reflecting telescope in 1668 that collected light with mirrors.
What is a green product?
Green products are environmentally safe products that contain no chlorofluorocarbons, are degradable, can decompose, and are made from recycled materials. Deep green products are those from small suppliers who build their identities around their claimed environmental virtues. Greened up products come from the industry giants and are environmentally improved versions of established brands.
Who invented chromatography?
Chromatography was invented by the Russian botanist Mikhail Tsvet, 1872 to 1919, in the early 1900s. The technique was first used to separate different plant pigments from one another. Chromatography has developed into a widely used method to separate various components of a substance from one another. Three types of chromatography are high-performance liquid chromatography, HPLC, gas chromatography, and paper chromatography. Different chromatography techniques are used in forensic science and analytical laboratories.
What bird has the biggest wingspan?
Three members of the albatross family: the wandering albatross, Diomede exculans, the royal albatross, Diomede epomophora, and the Amsterdam island albatross, Diomeda amsterdiamensis. Have the greatest wingspan of any bird species with a spread of 8 to 11 feet, 2.5 to 3.3 meters.
What is dermatoglyphics?
Dermatoglyphics, the study of fingerprints, recognizes three basic patterns of fingerprints. They are arches, loops, and whorls. The lines or ridges of an arch run from one side of the finger to the other with an upward curve in the center. In a loop, the ridges begin on one side, loop around the center, and return to the same side. The ridges of a whorl form a circular pattern. Dermatoglyphics is of interest in such diverse fields as medicine, anthropology, and criminology.
Why do stars twinkle?
Stars actually shine with a more or less constant light. They appear to twinkle to those of us observing them from Earth due mostly to atmospheric interference. Molecules and dust particles float at random in Earth's covering of gases. When such floating particles pass between a star and a person observing it, there is a brief interruption in the stream of light. Added together, these brief interruptions give rise to twinkling stars.
What is the p53 gene?
Discovered in 1979, p53, sometimes referred to as the guardian angel of the genome, is a gene that, when a cell's DNA is damaged, acts as an emergency brake to halt the resulting cycle of cell division that can lead to tumor growth and cancer. It also acts as an executioner, programming damaged cells to self-destruct before their altered DNA can be replicated. However, when it mutates, p53 can lose its suppressive powers or have the devastating effect of actually promoting abnormal cell growth. Indeed, p53 is the most commonly mutated gene found in human tumors. Scientists have discovered a compound that could restore function to a mutant p53. Such a discovery may lead to the development of anti-cancer drugs targeting the mutant p53 gene.
How is petrified wood formed?
Petrified wood is formed when water containing dissolved minerals such as calcium carbonate, CaCO3, and silicate infiltrates wood or other structures. The process takes thousands of years. The foreign material either replaces or encloses the organic matter and often retains all of the structural details of the original plant material. Botanists find these types of fossils to be very important since they allow for the study of the internal structure of extinct plants. After a time, wood seems to have turned to stone because the original form and structure are retained. The wood itself does not turn to stone.
What conditions result in microclimates?
Microclimates are small-scale regions where the average weather conditions are measurably different from the larger, surrounding region. Differences in temperature, precipitation, wind, or cloud cover can produce microclimates. Frequent causes of microclimates are differences in elevation, mountains that alter wind patterns, shorelines, and man-made structures, such as buildings, that can alter the wind patterns.
How fast do a hummingbird's wings move?
Hummingbirds are the only family of birds that can truly hover in still air for any length of time. They need to do so in order to hang in front of a flower while they perform the delicate task of inserting their slim, sharp bills into its depths to drink nectar. Their thin wings are not contoured into the shape of aerofoils and do not generate lift in this way. Their paddle-shaped wings are, in effect, hands that swivel at the shoulder. They beat them in such a way that the tip of each wing follows the line of a figure 8 lying on its side. The wing moves forward and downwards into the front loop of the 8, creating lift. As it begins to come up and go back, the wing twists through 180 degrees so that once again it creates a downward thrust. The hummingbird's method of flying does have one major limitation. The smaller the wing, the faster it has to beat in order to produce sufficient downward thrust. An average-sized hummingbird beats its wings 25 times per second. Small species beat their wings 50 to 80 times per second, and even faster during courtship displays. The bee hummingbird, native to Cuba, is only 2 inches, 5 centimeters long and beats its wings at an astonishing 200 times per second.
What are monoclonal antibodies?
Monoclonal antibodies are artificially produced antibodies designed to neutralize a specific foreign protein, antigen. Clone cells, genetically identical, are stimulated to produce antibodies to the target antigen. Most monoclonal antibody work so far has used clone cells from mice infected with cancer. In some cases they are used to destroy cancer cells directly. In others they carry other drugs to combat the cancer cells.
How much space does a recycled ton of paper save in a landfill?
Each ton, 907 kilograms, saves more than 3 cubic yards of landfill space. In addition, recycling 1 ton, 907 kilograms, of cardboard saves 9 cubic yards of landfill space.
Is it true that the rotation speed of Earth varies?
The rotation speed is at its maximum in late July and early August and at its minimum in April. The difference in the length of the day is about 0.0012 second. Since about 1900, Earth's rotation has been slowing at a rate of approximately 1.7 seconds per year. In the geologic past, Earth's rotational period was much faster. Days were shorter and there were more days in the year. About 350 million years ago, the year had 400 to 410 days. 280 million years ago, a year was 390 days long.
How many people living in the United States are centenarians?
The number of centenarians in the United States has increased steadily over the decades. The 2000 census recorded more than 50,000 centenarians, up from 37,000 in the 1990 census. The Census Bureau estimated there were 96,548 centenarians in the United States on November 1, 2008. The United Nations projects there will be 2.2 million centenarians, or 1 of every 5,000 people, worldwide by 2050.
Who invented Velcro?
The inspiration for Velcro came about when Swiss engineer Georges de Mestral, 1907 to 1990, took a closer look at those annoying cockleburs that stick so well to things like dog fur and your favorite pair of socks. He recreated what he discovered into a new type of fastener.
How does water move up a tree?
Water is carried up a tree through the xylem tissue in a process called transpiration. Constant evaporation from the leaf creates a flow of water from root to shoot. The roots of a tree absorb the vast majority of water that a tree needs. The properties of cohesion and adhesion allow the water to move up a tree regardless of its height. Cohesion allows the individual water molecules to stick together in one continuous stream. Adhesion permits the water molecules to adhere to the cellulose molecules in the walls of xylem cells. When the water reaches a leaf, water is evaporated, thus allowing additional water molecules to be drawn up through the tree.
What are the characteristics of alpha, beta, and gamma radiation?
Radiation is a term that describes all the ways energy is emitted by the atom as X-rays, gamma rays, neutrons, or as charged particles. Most atoms, being stable, are non-radioactive. Others are unstable and give off either particles or gamma radiation. Substances bombarded by radioactive particles can become radioactive and yield alpha particles, beta particles, and gamma rays. Alpha particles, first identified by Antoine Henri Becquerel, 1852–1908. Have a positive electrical charge and consist of 2 protons and 2 neutrons. Because of their great mass, alpha particles can travel only a short distance, around 2 inches, 5 centimeters, in air, and can be stopped by a sheet of paper. Beta particles, identified by Ernest Rutherford, 1871–1937. Are extremely high-speed electrons that move at the speed of light. They can travel far in air and can pass through solid matter several millimeters thick. Gamma rays, identified by Marie, 1867–1934, and Pierre Curie, 1859–1906. Are similar to X-rays, but they usually have a shorter wavelength. These rays, which are bursts of photons, or very short-wave electromagnetic radiation, travel at the speed of light. They are much more penetrating than either the alpha or beta particles and can go through 7 inches, 18 centimeters, of lead.
What is a whiteout?
An official definition for whiteout does not exist. It is a colloquial term that can describe any condition during snowfall that severely restricts visibility. That may mean a blizzard, or snow squall, etc. If you get some sunlight in the mix. That makes the situation even worse. It's like driving in fog with your headlights on high beam. The light gets backscattered right into your eyes and you can't see.
What is meant by the term strategic minerals?
Strategic minerals are minerals essential to national defense, the supply of which a country uses but cannot produce itself. A third to a half of the 80 minerals used by industry could be classed as strategic minerals. Wealthy countries, such as the United States, stockpile these minerals to avoid any crippling effect on their economy or military strength if political circumstances were to cut off their supplies. The United States, for instance, stockpiles bauxite, 10.5 million metric dry tons, manganese, 1.7 million metric tons, chromium, 1.4 million metric tons, tin, 59,993 metric tons, cobalt, 189 metric tons, tantalum, 635 tons, palladium, 1.25 million troy ounces, and platinum group metals. Platinum 4,704 kilograms, palladium 16,715 kilograms and iridium 784 kilograms.
Who was the first person on Antarctica?
Historians are unsure who first set foot on Antarctica, the fifth largest continent. Covering 10% of Earth's surface with its area of 5.1 million square miles, 13.2 million square kilometers. Between 1773 and 1775, British Captain James Cook, 1728 to 1779, circumnavigated the continent. American explorer Nathaniel Palmer, 1799 to 1877, discovered Palmer Peninsula in 1820. Without realizing that this was a continent. That same year, Fabian Gottlieb von Bellingshausen, 1779 to 1852, sighted the Antarctic continent. American sealer John Davis went ashore at Hughes Bay on February 7, 1821. In 1823, sealer James Weddell, 1787 to 1834, traveled the farthest south, 74 degrees south, that anyone had until that time, and entered what is now called the Weddell Sea. In 1840, American Charles Wilkes, 1798 to 1877, who followed the coast for 1,500 miles. 2,414 kilometers, announced the existence of Antarctica as a continent. In 1841, Sir James Clark Ross, 1800 to 1862, discovered Victoria Land. Ross Island, Mount Erebus, and the Ross Ice Shelf. In 1895, the whaler Henrik Bull landed on the Antarctic continent. Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen, 1872 to 1928, was the first to reach the South Pole on December 14, 1911. 34 days later, Amundsen's rival Robert Falcon Scott, 1868 to 1912, stood at the South Pole. The second to do so, but he and his companions died during their return trip.
Which common houseplants are poisonous?
Philodendron, Philodendron and Monstera, and Dumcane. Dieffenbachia, are some of the most common poisonous houseplants. All parts of both of these plants are poisonous.
How do prions work and what diseases have been linked to prions?
Scientists have not discovered exactly how prions work. Current research shows that prions accumulate in lysosomes. In the brain, it is possible that the filled lysosomes burst and damage cells. As diseased cells die, the prions contained in the cells are released and are able to attack other cells. It is thought that prions are responsible for the group of brain diseases known as transmissible spongiform encephalopathies, TSES. This group includes the disease that is referred to as bovine spongiform encephalopathy. Mad cow disease, when it occurs in cattle, and Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease when it occurs in humans.
Does human hair grow faster in summer or winter?
During the summertime, the rate of human hair growth increases by about 10% to 15%. This is because warm weather enhances blood circulation to the skin and scalp, which in turn nourishes hair cells and stimulates growth. In cold weather, when blood is needed to warm internal organs, circulation to the body surface slows and hair cells grow less quickly.
What were Anders Engström's contributions to the development of spectroscopy?
Swedish physicist and astronomer Anders Jonas Engström, 1814 to 1874, was one of the founders of spectroscopy. His early work provided the foundation for spectrum analysis. Analysis of the ranges of electromagnetic radiation emitted or absorbed. He investigated the sun spectra as well as that of the aurora borealis. In 1868, he established measurements for wavelengths of greater than 100 Fraunhofer. In 1907, the angstrom, A, equal to 1 × 10 to 10 meters. A unit of wavelength measurement, was officially adopted.
What is vitrification?
Vitrification is a technique that transforms radioactive liquid waste into a solid. The nuclear material is mixed with sand or clay. The mixture is then heated to the melting point of the sand or to the point the clay forms a ceramic. Although the resulting composite material is still radioactive, it is much easier and safer to handle, transport, and store the radioactive liquid waste as a solid.
Is Earth closer to the Sun in winter than in summer in the Northern Hemisphere?
Yes. However, Earth's axis, the line around which the planet rotates, is tipped 23.5 degrees with respect to the plane of revolution around the Sun. When Earth is closest to the Sun, it's perihelion. About January 3, the northern hemisphere is tilted away from the Sun. This causes winter in the northern hemisphere while the southern hemisphere is having summer. When Earth is farthest from the Sun, it's aphelion, around July 4. The situation is reversed, with the northern hemisphere tilted toward the Sun. At this time, it is summer in the northern hemisphere and winter in the southern hemisphere.
How much water can the average family in the United States save by installing efficient water fixtures and checking regularly for leaks?
The average family in the United States would use only 45.2 gallons, 171 liters, of water per day. Saving 24.1 gallons, 91 liters, per day, by installing more efficient water fixtures and checking for leaks. This reduces daily per capita water use by 35%.
What is a banyan tree?
The banyan tree, Ficus bengalensis. Native to tropical regions of Southeast Asia, is a member of the genus Ficus. It is a magnificent evergreen that can reach 100 feet, 30.48 meters, in height. As the massive limbs spread horizontally, the tree sends down roots that develop into secondary, pillar-like supporting trunks. Over a period of years, a single tree may spread to occupy as much as 2,000 feet. 610 meters, around its periphery.
What is lithotripsy?
Lithotripsy is the use of ultrasonic or shock waves to pulverize kidney stones. Calculi, allowing the small particles to be excreted or removed from the body. There are two different methods: extracorporeal shockwave lithotripsy, ESWL, and percutaneous lithotripsy. The ESWL method, used on smaller stones, breaks up the stones with external shock waves from a machine called a lithotripter. This technique has eliminated the need for more invasive stone surgery in many cases. For larger stones, a type of endoscope, called a nephroscope, is inserted into the kidney through a small incision. The ultrasonic waves from the nephroscope shatter the stones, and the fragments are removed through the nephroscope.